Hello, welcome back to my channel. I would like to begin by apologising for this slightly weird setup. I'm sat by the side of my bed on the floor because I couldn't find anywhere else better to film. The last video I uploaded was about MMI interviews and my top tips for those. So today I'm going to be making a video about my top tips for panel interviews. I'm specifically going to be tailoring this towards UCL applicants because I was interviewed at UCL, which was a panel interview, and that's where I got an offer from. So I feel like I could probably give good advice on how to prepare specifically for UCL panel interviews. I know that other universities do have panel interviews as well, but I'm sure that they differ slightly in the way that they're set out and the sort of questions that they ask. So hopefully this video will still apply to those universities. So I had my UCL interview in January and I was interviewed by a panel of 2 people. So it was a man and a woman. So the first half of my interview was being interviewed specifically by the man, and then the second half was me being interviewed by the woman, who I believe was a consultant, and I think the man was one of the professors at the UCL Medical School. First tip is to make sure that you have gone back over your BMAT section 3, because when you get called for interview they will give you a copy of the essay that you wrote for section 3 in the BMAT. They just give it to you, they don't tell you what to do, but you basically just need to go through there and highlight some of the main points that you made and then annotate them. Maybe annotate some of the points that you thought were a little bit weaker, and if you're questioned on it in the interview you can expand on it, and then also add in some points at the bottom that you think would help back up your argument or perhaps give more evidence. So you get about 15 minutes beforehand, so try and spend this time wisely and actually annotate it. And I mean, if you show that when you walk into the interview that you've written a lot on the sheet of paper, they will be impressed. I remember when I walked into the room, the guy was like, wow, you've written a lot on that sheet of paper. So he didn't really ask me a lot of questions about my essay, because you could obviously see that I'd annotated it a lot. When I got out of my BMAT, after I'd sat it at the end of October, I actually just wrote down some of the points that I'd made in my essay so that I could remind myself before I went in for the interview, to like kind of refresh my memory. So that, yeah, that's really important for you to do. Tip number 2 is to make sure that you direct your answers towards both of the interviewers. Even if one interviewer asks you a question, make sure you direct your answer towards both of them so that it doesn't seem like you're giving too much attention to one interviewer, and then it also makes sure that both of the interviewers, or 3 of them, all feel included. And it also shows that you're confident if you're not just answering your question directly to one person. So yeah, of course, try and answer it more to that person, but also make eye contact with the other people in the room. Tip number 3 is to be prepared for more stereotypical interview questions. So when I walked in, the first question I got asked after I got quizzed very shortly about my essay was, why medicine? And I was blown away because I was thinking, this is a panel interview, of course I'm not going to get asked why medicine, but I did. So make sure, as I said in my other video, that you have a sincere, genuine answer prepared for this. Doesn't sound like you've just learned it. And going along with that, they might ask you questions about leadership, communication, times that you've shown these. So I think I got asked about a time that I had shown leadership in one of the roles that I'd put on my personal statement. So I'd written about a hospice that I'd volunteered in, and they asked me about a time that I had shown leadership in this skill, and I don't think I gave a very good answer. So then the woman kind of prompted me and was like, okay, can you think of maybe another example when you've used leadership? So then I came up with another answer, and that applied more to the role of leadership. I'd say think of the top few skills that you're going to need in medicine. For example, leadership, communication, teamwork, and then for that write down some bullet points of times that you've shown that in your life, so that when they ask you that question you actually have a valid example that you can back up and say, yes, this definitely shows leadership, communication, teamwork, etc. You need to show that you can reflect on what you've learned. So For example, if you were head girl or head boy, try and think what exactly you learned from it and what you've taken away from it, and then how you can apply that to a career in medicine, or whilst you're studying at medical school, how that's going to be applicable to everyday life and when you're studying with your peers. Tip number 4 is to practice ethical issues, because this is definitely going to come up. UCL for some reason seem to love their ethical issues. I got asked on an ethical issue. I know there was a boy who came out before me and he got asked on an ethical issue. So I'd say keep up with the news, know the 4 pillars of medical ethics, listen to some podcasts on ethical dilemmas, and especially because you're in a panel interview, they could ask you more follow-up questions than in an MMI interview, because they're obviously there with you for a longer time. Make sure that you give a fair and balanced argument, that you're not too biased, and that you know how to back up your points. Don't just give up if they try to prompt you or ask you further questions about the ethical issue, because they want to see that you can kind of stand up for a point. But then also, if what you've said is slightly controversial and they don't agree with it, that you are flexible with your thinking and you're not just going to be really rigid in your answer. And tip number 5 is just be yourself, be genuine. With panel interviews, it's a lot easier for them to see through you because they're with you for 20 minutes to half an hour. So whereas with MMI interviews you can get away with trying to act a certain way, if you're sat with somebody for half an hour, it's easy for them to see through you, and it's easy for them to see if you haven't prepared for this interview. So be yourself, just be polite, try to think of an answer for if they ask you why specifically that medical school. So do your research. If the course is integrated, come up with reasons why you'd want to do that. If it's more PVL based, think about reasons you'd want to do that. If you can show that you're actually dedicated and you really genuinely want to come to this medical school, and not that you've just applied to this medical school by chance, that will shine through in your interview. So yeah, as I said, MMI interviews are slightly different from panel interviews, but they kind of cover the same basis, same sort of things. So if you want to find out more about interviews, then have a look at my other video which was about MMI interviews. Hope you enjoy this video. Please like it if you did, and comment down below any questions you have, whether that's about medicine, applying for medicine in general, applying to UCL, that sort of stuff. I will try and answer your questions. So yes, follow my Instagram, the name is on the screen now, and I will see you again in another video. Bye!